You're wrong about tank. It's time to face these facts and improve your mindset on the tank role in order to carry your games better. Yes, tank is by far the worst role in the game right now. However, it still has its carry potential once you know how to identify certain situations, because in any lobby that is below mid masters, you can still make things work. How do I know? Because I play at that level and I also play at the level of GM, so I know from experience that it is possible to carry your game. So instead of crying, let's start carrying. All right, that's going to be the mindset going forward. I need all of you to strengthen the mental. We are the tank, we are the raid boss. Okay, and while sometimes everything can blow us up, sometimes in these very small tiny situations we are going to be the ones that blow everything up. So let's talk about tank as the role, and how do we improve our mindset going forward and not be that Reinhardt player that shield bots in main, blows up and cries in chat that my team didn't do anything, because I'm seeing that way too much. And our first tank today that we're going to talk about the misconceptions of and the right mindset to have is going to be Reinhardt. My fellow Reinhardt players out there, I have one advice for you. You are not a shield bot. For the love of God, just because you have the big giant shield, yes, there are situations where you're going to use it to protect your team, but it is not primarily used for you to sit in a choke, hold the shield up, and let your team do the job. Reinhardt is a very aggressive tank. He is a very, very powerful brawler, and he has really good matchups against like maybe 40% of the roster. If you know what you're doing and you know how to position with Ryan and use shield dancing, you can actually play Reinhardt really well. So how do we play Reinhardt? I'm just gonna give like a general advice to for all the tanks, and then I'm gonna move and we're gonna do guides in the future for the tanks. So more in-depth stuff as well as footage will be over there. So with Reinhardt, you want to shield dance. You want to balance out taking damage on your armor and using your shield when the armor is low on your HP bar. Try to use that as your reference point on how to use your shield and balance out, like, when you want to take damage and when you don't. Now, to play aggressive with Reinhardt, always make sure to take the space and take fights further away from the point after you've captured it, and then move back onto the point. Let's say it's a payload map, King's Row. You walked up 2 or 3 corners ahead with your teammates, you take a fight, you move back over to the payload, and then you play aggressive again. Alternatively, if you win the fight in those chokes, well, then your team and you can just keep pushing, right? So please, Reinhardt players, you are not a shield bot on the payload. Stop doing this in low elo. I see this way too much. I see this way too much. Please, I'm begging you, stop doing this, okay? Moving over to the Junker Queen players. Junker Queen players, for the love of God, stop being so scared. I see way too many Junker Queen players that enter a lobby, the team fight starts, and they use the commanding shout to disengage. Junker Queen is a little bit more of like a tank that relies on that speed to quickly get in, secure kill, apply pressure, move in. You can either stall for time against the enemy tank, play with your DPS, try to get that pick and then bombard their team, or you can slightly look for a cheeky knife where you can just hook them in, bring them towards you, and get a kill, right? So it just depends on the playstyle, but please, there are way too many Jungle Queen players that get scared from the slightest poke damage that they take, and then they back out. Be firm, be strong, be very careful with your commanding shout. Number one advice I have is be very, very careful with commanding shout. Use the corners more. Understand that commanding shout is your engagement tool, and yes, it can be used to disengage, but please try to use it to make aggressive plays rather than just always using it to run away. Otherwise, you're not doing anything on Junker Queen. We're going to be fast tracking through all the tanks since we have so many, and for certain tanks I want to give a little bit more detailed advice. So we're going to come down to Diva, and I do have a Diva guide up, so for the more in-depth stuff that is simplified in the Diva guide, you can go check it out. However, my general advice to you Diva players is you guys are wasting the defense matrix like crazy. It's like you pop open the Coca-Cola bottle and you drop it all over the floor, but nobody gets to drink anything because you just drop the cola all over the floor. What I mean is you're wasting your defense matrix when it's not necessary. Again, same advice that I gave to the Reinhardt players is understand that there are certain situations where you don't need a defense matrix. You can tank some hits, you can turn around and show your back if you don't want to get headshotted and things like that. Like watch your armor HP bar, your armor bar. If the armor bar is starting to get low, then consider using your defense matrix, etc, etc, right? Understand that not like if you try to use bomb and then engage, it's not the best thing to do. Bomb is a really good disruption and displacement tool that you should learn how to follow up on your own bombs, right? Now, if you get a few picks with bomb and then you can engage with it to be more aggressive, all the power to you, but it's an inconsistent playstyle that the higher up you go, the worse it's going to get. So please keep this in mind. I'm begging. For D.Va players, please keep this in mind and understand that you are one of the better Fire Mercy counters. In low elo, I see a lot of topics about Fire Mercy, Fire Mercy, Fire Mercy. D.Va tank, your answer to Fire Mercy is D.Va, and you have to understand that that doesn't mean that you need to go fly up to the Pharah in order to kill her and then counter her. You do a really good job of just disrupting the Pharah, or just marking her and like defense matrixing her shots. You need to like keep in track that Pharah has 6 rockets, so you need to find a way to tank those 6 rockets for your team. And in that downtime when Pharah is reloading, you can go pressure her, contest her. You can do so many things in the Pharah interaction. It's really like a skill battle between D.Va and Pharah. And while you're causing that disruption and the Pharah just can't like shoot your team, your hit scan should have a better chance of dueling that Pharah. So please, D.Va players, keep this in mind as we move on, right? Next up, we got Orisa. Don't die. Next up, we got Ramatra. Now with Ramatra, you I'm sorry. Honestly, the best Orisa advice I have for a lot of people is just understand how to rotate your cooldowns, and understand like you don't always need to chase for kills on Orisa. Orisa's strength comes from the fact that she can take a lot of damage, she can take a lot of attention, and she like I know it's weird to say this, but you really don't want to like chase for kills. If anything, you want to try and make sure that everybody is looking at you. Like if because the thing with Orisa is because her cooldown cycling is really consistent, and her armor and fortify and removing her head hitbox can keep like just fortify herself into that area and just never die. It gives your team more chances to breathe. So definitely what you want to do on Orisa is make sure that you can take eyes off of your team by just like literally just walk up into people's faces and make them face you. You know, use your javelin to save a teammate or something like that. Just get them away from your team. Lots of Orisa players, I just see them like they enter the choke, they hit shift and they just run it down mid, and then they die and they're like, wow, this character is not as strong as I thought. And it's like, yeah, because you're not supposed to be doing that. You know, like Orisa's kill potential is like mid at best, but her strength is in the fact that she can stay alive and cause so much disruption. So please try to keep that in mind when you're playing Orisa. Your true kill potential and combo potential comes in your ultimate. When you can combo your ultimate with the rest of your cooldowns and everything, that's when you definitely want to look for some aggressive plays. But other than that, try to play closer to your team. Understand that you're a poke tank. Play close to your team. Don't just run off to Narnia, get your head blown off, and start blaming your supports. It's not how you play Orisa, right? Coming over to Ramatra players, you guys have it pretty good. There's like the only thing that I see a lot of people don't understand on Ram is actually how to best use the Sage form, as I like to call it. Is the one with the staff, right? And in the Sage form, like my best advice for it is please understand how to utilize the shield positioning. The shield, yes, you can use it to block some damage and things like that, but the main point of that barrier is to you want to put it up into an area where you're going to walk to. Now, old school Orisa players will understand how to use that barrier the best, because you put a barrier up to where you're going to walk so it can tank the damage for you. You get into that safe position where you want to brawl, and then you enter the big Hulk tank form, right? And then you start bashing away like the raging monster you are. So try to keep that in mind, because lots of matcha players, they just like they turn a corner, enemy has some poke damage coming in, they waste their shield, and now as they're walking towards that area to contest the enemy team, they're getting bursted down, and they might use the nemesis form too early, and then now they're like sitting there wasting time by just block botting. So please, the shield placement is really, really important, and that is going to be the key to improving on Ramatra, because that's pretty much like the rest of it is really easy. Like honestly, going into Nemesis form, looking at a target and like a squishy target and four-shotting them, it's not that difficult to do. His ultimate is also really easy to use, and mostly I see people using the ultimate as a means to either like push the point into overtime and force so much pressure. And while that is really, really good, that's a really good mindset to have for it, try to understand that the ultimate is also a really good engagement tool. You don't need to hold it until the very last second. Try to actually use it to start a fight and cause so much pressure for them to back out. And even if you don't get kills, it's okay, because you put you and your team into an advantageous position where you've just taken so much space, and you can cooldown cycle back into Nemesis form to keep applying pressure. So keep that in mind, my Ramatra players out there. Roadhog, don't play this character. Sigma, until his rework comes out. Until Roadhog's rework comes out, he's just really bad to play. He's just a worse Junker Queen. You're better off playing Junker Queen. When Roadhog gets improved, we're gonna do a guide on the new Roadhog. Now Sigma. Sigma is very interesting. He's also a poke tank in that niche with Orisa. Sigma loses to Brawl. So for the love of God, the only advice I have for Sigma players is, why do you guys pick Sigma and run it down mid towards Junker Queen, Reinhardt, Doomfist, Ramatra, Zarya, and I see every Sigma player do this, and they get outbrawled in 5 seconds, and then the team just falls apart. Please, when you're playing Sigma, his strength isn't the fact that he has range. If, for example, you're playing into Circuit Royale, it's a sniper map, it's good for Sigma for various reasons that I don't want to dig into for now. If they have a brawl tank, let's say you're defending with Sig and they have a brawl tank, let's say Reinhardt, right? You are not going to win that close 1v1 battle. Your strength with Sigma is the fact that you can take distance and just keep poking away with your team, and at some point the Ryan shield will break, and that's when you want to rock the Reinhardt, secure the kill on him, and go on his team. Or you can pressure a squishy that's off angling. So please, Sigma players, keep this in mind. Back away from the enemy brawl tanks. You are not equipped to deal with them as much as you think you are. I play, even till this day in GM, I run into Sigma players that will just walk up into my Ramatra or my Reinhardt, and they just get melted, and I'm just like, what are you doing? I'm in a better position than you are. You know, like, you came to me when I was supposed to come to you. So it's very, very disheartening to see so many Sigma players making this very basic mistake. So that's my advice to the Sigma players. Winston players. Okay, I'm going to save Winston and Doomfist for last because they're going to require a lot of time, right? Zarya, do not be scared to use your bubble on your teammates. I understand that you want to be more selfish because it brings more value, and I fully fundamentally agree on that. But the number one thing that I feel like lots of Zarya players don't understand, because they think, oh, but my synergy with Reinhardt's not a thing anymore. You can actually find that synergy in other characters if you just understand how those characters are going to play. For example, Genji and Tracer are more often than not going to be in the enemy's backline. Reaper is going to be looking for some, backline flanks too. You can start using your bubbles on them, get some charge, and apply pressure from your direction, creating a two-pronged attack that the enemy might not be prepared for. So expand your thought process and don't try to just keep it this one linear playstyle of, okay, I just absorb damage and go in. Because if the enemy team is good, they're not going to shoot you, right? But they're not expecting the bubbles on characters like Genji, Tracer, and Reaper. So definitely try your best to do something like that, my Zarya mains. Wrecking Ball. Okay, Wrecking Ball is a very interesting one. On Wrecking Ball, honestly, it's really like, there's so much stuff to talk about on Wrecking Ball, but my main advice is please memorize the positions of the map. The biggest misconception on Wrecking Ball players is that they roll over into their supports and they're like, okay, heal me. If you are a Wrecking Ball player, and okay, yeah, there'll be very small times where you genuinely need to come back and get healed by your supports, right? But if you're a Wrecking Ball player and you're relying on your supports, you are actually unironically throwing the game. You are unironically throwing the game. Wrecking Ball is not is a disruption tank. He's kind of with Doomfist. There's this like new sub archetype in the tank role called Disruption Tank, and Wrecking Ball is pretty good at that. And while it's not good in this meta just because of the way Orisa is and everything like that, Ball has his moments here and there. So Wrecking Ball players, please memorize the locations of the megas and minis in your games, in your maps. In fact, just take 1 hour of your day, go through every map in Overwatch, and just like have a look around as to where all the megas and minis are. Right? I'm not here to teach how to do some other stuff. That I will save for the ball guide video. But again, we're trying to talk about general misconceptions or mindsets, and we're trying to improve that, right? So Wrecking Ball players, yes, there's some niche situations where you need to come back to your team and your supports. But if you're going to play ball in this game, then you need to understand your map knowledge has to be really good, not just for the health packs, but how you're going to use your grapple hooks to find your slams. All right. That then brings us down to the final two tanks. I believe it is Doomfist and Winston. Number one advice on Winston I have is, Winston players, it is not 2016 dive. I know of a best friend who still sometimes uses that playstyle. It is so outdated, it just doesn't work anymore. Winston is a lot about precise positioning before bringing up the barrier, his bubble barrier, in order to mostly cut off healing for the person he's caught in that cage, so that he can have a comfort in eliminating them. Yes, there are certain situations where sometimes just hard diving with Winston and going into the backline is going to work. But when you hard dive with Winston nowadays, support cooldowns are so strong that there is no way you're going to, more often than not, going to get like an insta kill like you could back in 2016, 2017, right? Supports have become very strong. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to use our first jump to position in a way where we could walk up and apply pressure to the enemy front line, And then from that point, when we've applied that pressure and we've, let's say, forced the Anane to heal her team, we forced the Suzu out because we applied some pressure or whatever the case might be, then we're going to hard commit with the dive. And if it doesn't work out in our favor, we're going to use our next jump to disengage and rinse and repeat that process. Lots of Winston players nowadays in every ELO, even low GM to high masters, so many Winston players just think that Winston is, I lock in, I jump in, and then I die. Okay, it's my team's fault. It's not the team's fault. It is your fault. You are throwing if you play Winston like that. Like I said, there's very niche situations. What could be a niche situation where hard diving could work? Well, if you're going to get nano monkeyed, or if you have a nano blading Genji, you definitely want to hard dive with them, and you're going to get some value because the enemy has to really commit resources towards the Genji and less towards you. Therefore, less chances of you getting slept, countered, Suzu'd, etc. Right? I'm moving over to Doomfist. Doomfist is by far the hardest tank and the most fun tank to play, in my opinion. Doomfist is my main, right next to Reinhardt and Winston, and I really enjoy playing him. He's my #1 tank. I've played him for over 2,000 hours in Overwatch 1. He was my second most played character in the DPS role. The #1 is Genji, and I adore Doomfist. But the advice I have for Doomfist players is, you guys don't understand, like majority of people that play Doomfist, you do not understand how to play this character. Lots of people are doing two things I've noticed. They either play him like he's just another Winston, or number two, they are just sitting in the front line block bot, like they just block bot. They try to do a punch, either that punch lands and they go back to doing the same thing, or they miss that punch and they feed. With Doomfist, you have to just keep running all over the map. You're like Wrecking Ball. You want to just be all over the place, all over the time, looking for that tiny opportunity to kill a support or a damage player or punish the enemy tank with your team, and then just keep that pressure up. It's really important to be good at cycling cooldowns with Doomfist and understanding when you can actually engage and when to disengage. So my general advice for Doomfist is, my fellow Doomfist players out there, please try to prioritize keeping like that, being really smart with an empowered punch. Getting empowered punch, the higher up you go, becomes really, really difficult because people understand that Doomfist's normal punch doesn't do anything. It doesn't do damage. It boops you a little bit, but who cares about that, right? So once you have an empowered punch, don't just waste it. If you feel like an opportunity is gone, cancel that empowered punch, hold on to it, block bot for a little bit, fly off somewhere with your E, and then try again. Okay, make that one punch count. Literally, make that one punch count, and if it does, you're going to find insane value. Make sure to combo it with your seismic slam. Lots of Doomfist, sometimes when they are committing, don't want to overcommit, and that's a good thing, because if it messes up, you may die. But sometimes with Doomfist, we just don't have a choice but to trade 1 for 2. But it is in that scenario where you know you can get 1 for 2, and then, you know, hope to God that your team kind of does your best from there. The other advice I have is the really boring and safe Doomfist playstyle is just constantly disrupt the enemy tank, tilt him off the planet, and you'll actually find value because that guy will hard focus you and you will just outpace him all the time. We're going to have a lot more in-depth, in-detailed guides coming for all the tanks in the future. This is some general advice I have, general misconceptions on a lot of these tanks, right? And tank is not in a good spot, but going into the next season, it does seem like it's going to get better. So I want to try my level best to help my low elo players out there improve their mindset. If you're diamond and above, you basically know all the basics that you need to know, and you just need to work on your micro mechanics, and that's perfectly fine, right? But if you're anywhere below diamond, then you definitely need to hear this advice, and that's what's holding you back in your elo. Less crying, more carrying. That's what I want from my students from now on. Less crying, more carrying. Less crying, more carrying, and that's how you're going to climb, because that's how I did it across 7 to 8 accounts, and that's how you're going to do it. We're legit doing it on my on this account, which is my main Overwatch 2 account. We've been climbing on it on stream, and everybody's been learning from my example. So with that being said, that's going to be it for this video. Tomorrow is the DPS video. It's going to be very in-depth, and then from that point on, we have a lot of Overwatch Season 7 content coming. This channel keeps growing, guys. I really appreciate you guys, and please stick around. It means a lot to me. I'm not asking for anything, but if you want to support me, you can do that through the super chat down below, or if you want to do it for free and not pay me and let YouTube do that, just hit like, drop a comment on what you think about the state of tank, and hit the subscribe button. It helps with the algorithm, helps me getting paid so I can eat and improve the production quality in these videos over time. It's our channel. Let's grow together. I've been Abby. I will always be with you in the next video.